I never thought the chalk drawing would lead to a police search, an FBI file, and a mother in handcuffs, sobbing into a cardigan. But that's exactly what happened when my neighbor, Karen, decided she was above the law. It started on a Thursday morning, just like any other. My daughter Ellie, 6, and my son Max, 8, were out front before school, drawing a rainbow and a dinosaur on the sidewalk. Max was using his green chalk to sketch fire-breathing T-Rexes, and Ellie added stars and hearts around them. Innocent, harmless fun. Until the storm showed up. And I don't mean weather. Karen, mid-40s, bob haircut sharper than her tone, dressed like a Banana Republic ad with the superiority complex. She marched across the street holding a clipboard, like she was writing up battlefield reports, not chalk art complaints. "That's graffiti," she snapped. Max blinked. "It's a dinosaur." Karen scowled like he'd sworn at her. "This is a respectable neighborhood. You people can't just draw whatever you want." "You people," I repeated, stepping out of the garage, where I'd been watching from behind the tool bench. Karen didn't even flinch. "Your family's already on thin ice with the HOA judge." Ah yes, the irony. Because what Karen didn't know, what no one in this cul-de-sac of trimmed hedges and four-car garages knew, was that I wasn't just a judge. I was a federal judge, one of the youngest appointed to the circuit. I handled cases that involved people like her, abusing authority in the name of rules. I smiled politely. Sidewalk chalk isn't a crime. Karen's lips curled like I'd said something filthy. "We'll see about that." And that should have been it. Should have ended with a scoff and a silent retreat. But Karen doesn't retreat. That afternoon, I came home from court to find a notice taped to my door, in all red caps. HOA violation. Unapproved sidewalk markings. $50 fine. I laughed. Legitimately laughed. It was so stupid. A fine for sidewalk chalk. But the real problem wasn't the notice. It was the pattern. Because the next week, Ellie's birthday balloons apparently violated aesthetic uniformity. That earned us another fine. Then Max's plastic basketball hoop. Then the color of our welcome mat. Then our garbage bins were visible from the street for 8 minutes too long. It became clear that Karen had declared war. Still, we didn't fight back, not at first. My wife, Sarah, said to let it go. "It's not worth it," she'd said. "She's just bitter and bored." And maybe she was. But bitter boredom turned into obsession. And obsession turned into something far darker. It happened on a Saturday. Sarah was visiting her mother 2 hours away. I stayed home with the kids, quiet weekend. We baked cookies, played catch in the backyard, watched old cartoons. Around 3:15 p.m., I stepped inside to grab my phone. Maybe 5-6 minutes, tops. When I came back out, the kids were gone. No screams. No sounds. Just silence and their sidewalk chalk drying in the sun. I checked the house. Every room. The attic. The garage. I ran to the neighbors, knocking doors, heart pounding, calling their names. Nothing. It took 8 minutes for panic to turn into dread. And at 3:30, I called the police. "I think my children have been taken," I told dispatch. My voice was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. The dispatcher asked the usual. "When did you last see them? Any signs of forced entry? Do they have a history of wandering?" No, and no. They'd been right there, in the backyard, drawing aliens on the patio bricks. Police arrived within minutes. Officers did a quick sweep, asked more questions, radioed for more units. When they pulled security footage from the house next door, one with a Ring camera, we saw it, clear as day. Karen, smiling, leading both kids across the street. Max looked confused. Ellie was holding her stuffed rabbit. Karen had her phone in one hand and a picnic basket in the other, like it was a field trip. I saw red. The officers froze the frame. "Is that her?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, that's Karen. That's our neighbor." They stared at me, confused. "Why would she take your children?" "She thinks we broke HOA rules." They blinked like I'd lost my mind. "She what?" "She thinks we broke HOA rules." I repeated. "She's been harassing us for weeks. Fines. Threats. I've got all of it documented." The officer muttered something into his radio. That's not just harassment anymore. That's a criminal abduction. An Amber Alert was issued within the hour. Squad cars surrounded Karen's house. They knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Still nothing. That's when they kicked in the door. Karen was in the living room with my kids, feeding them cookies. The TV was playing some old Disney movie. She looked up like she'd just been disturbed at a tea party. "Oh," she said, surprised. "You're early." Police drew weapons, ordered her to the ground. But Karen didn't flinch. "They're not in danger," she said calmly. "I was teaching them a lesson. Their father doesn't respect rules, so I brought them over for some structure." Let that sink in. She kidnapped my kids to teach me a lesson. A civilian, a neighbor, a middle-aged suburban HOA, Karen took it upon herself to abduct 2 children in broad daylight because she thought our sidewalk chalk was a violation of community standards. My hands were shaking, not just with fear, with rage. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead I stood there, calm, because I'm a judge, and I knew exactly how this was going to play out. Karen was arrested, charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, unlawful restraint, child endangerment, and trespassing. She tried to smile in the squad car. "You people are so dramatic," she said. "You're going to prison," I replied. "I have friends on the board," she smirked. "They'll clear this up." I leaned closer, looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm a federal judge, and you just made a mistake you can't HOA your way out of." Karen was arrested, cuffed, and stuffed into the back of a cruiser like she was just another Saturday night drunk. But the madness didn't stop there. That evening, as I sat with Ellie and Max wrapped in blankets and answering gentle questions from a trauma officer, 2 members of the HOA board knocked on my door. I opened it expecting an apology. Instead, one of them, Doug, the HOA treasurer, actually tried to defend her. "She didn't mean harm," he said with a half-smile. "Karen's just very passionate about neighborhood standards." "Passionate?" I repeated. "She told us your kids were being neglected." He added, "that you left them alone for hours." I was inside grabbing a phone charger. "For 5 minutes," I snapped, "and she walked them out of our yard and locked them in her house without permission." His face twisted. "Well, maybe let's just not press charges. Handle this civilly." I closed the door in his face. I wasn't just pressing charges. I was going for blood. The next morning, I contacted 2 colleagues in federal prosecution. Not only had Karen committed multiple felonies, but this HOA board had a disturbing record of enabling her behavior. I had 17 violation notices, half of them handwritten, many threatening. And the worst part, I found out this wasn't even her first incident. Another neighbor, single mom, name withheld, shared that Karen once took her daughter for a walk and didn't return for 2 hours. The mother didn't report it because Karen claimed it was a misunderstanding. That HOA board resolved it internally. This wasn't some one-off. Karen had a pattern, and the HOA was covering for her. By day 3, Karen had posted bail, thanks to the HOA's emergency fund. She walked out smirking, still wearing that smug yellow jacket like it was a crown. But her arrogance would be her final mistake, because while she played neighborhood dictator, I filed a formal complaint with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I brought affidavits, video footage, signed statements, and, most importantly, legal precedent. You don't mess with someone who's clerked for the Ninth Circuit. The feds called me back within 48 hours. Karen wasn't just looking at county jail time. She was facing federal child endangerment charges. And it didn't stop with her. Doug, the HOA treasurer, he was subpoenaed next. So was the HOA president. Turns out the entire board had been illegally issuing fines and covering up Karen's misconduct for years. And when the investigation deepened, something else came up: embezzlement. Karen's HOA aesthetic budget? Yeah, it funded a private gardener, catered brunches, even a weekend retreat she labeled urban design planning. Thousands of dollars gone, spent on herself and her clique. In less than a week, the HOA was in full collapse. Karen was rearrested, this time by federal marshals. And trust me, it was beautiful. They cuffed her on the sidewalk in front of everyone. She screamed that she had rights, that she was keeping the community safe. But there was no HOA to back her up now. 2 months later, she stood in a federal courtroom in front of a judge who wasn't me, but was someone I'd gone to law school with. She pled guilty to kidnapping, endangerment, and mail fraud for her role in the HOA's shady financial practices. She got 9 years. The HOA was dissolved completely, and the properties it controlled were returned to county management. Every resident had their records cleared of those bogus fines. I didn't just protect my kids, I protected the entire neighborhood. It took time for Ellie and Max to sleep peacefully again, but they did. And this past spring, when Ellie drew another rainbow on the sidewalk, I took a picture of it, framed it, hung it in my office at the courthouse. Because sometimes a rainbow is more than a drawing. Sometimes it's a warning. Thanks for sticking with this story. If you love real justice, underdog revenge, and entitled people getting what they deserve, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more insane HOA stories. You won't believe what happens in the next one.